One of the most ruthless and harrowing female concentration camp guards was Maria Mandl, a woman who was sent to the gallows inside of a Polish execution chamber, as she was condemned for being complicit in the murder of 500,000 people inside Auschwitz. She was a woman who trained other women how to become guards, and she would at the end of the war find herself in the custody of the Allies, who sent her back to the country of her greatest crimes, Poland. Maria Mandl was one of the most experienced guards who worked inside of the SS sites during the war, and she was known to Heinrich Himmler and other officials. But she was as brutal and barbaric as many of the male guards, and she drove inmates into the gas chambers, and also on one occasion allegedly even burned a female prisoner alive inside of the Auschwitz crematoria. She did meet justice with her execution, but what specifically did she do inside of the camps, and what other crimes did she commit? To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Maria Mandl was born in January 1912, and she was the daughter of a shoemaker. The family owned a farm, and there was little to suggest what she would later do in her life. Her father actually spoke out against the Nazis, but Maria left school at the age of 12. She at one point moved to Switzerland and held different jobs, but she returned back home to Austria and worked as a maid in a villa. However, at the time, she was slowly inside of the country becoming exposed to the Nazi Party, who were beginning to impose upon Austrian politics. Eventually, the nation would become aligned with the Nazis in the Anschluss, as Austria was annexed into the German Reich. However, Maria Mandl, who worked as a nanny at one point, was fired as she was not of the opinion of a Nazi. She sort of fell into working inside the concentration camps, and she moved in with her uncle, and she thought he could help her get a job in the police force. Maria was then encouraged to take a job as a female overseer, an Aufseherin inside the concentration camps, which were being opened. She would later admit that she knew nothing about what the concentration camps were when she signed up, and she took the job initially because of the increase in pay, and she knew she could earn more money in this role than she would working as a nurse. She was trained and indoctrinated in the Nazi racial policies, and was interrogated about her attitude towards Hitler and his empire. She was then sent to Lichtenberg, an all-female camp, to work, and she passed her 3-month trial. She was influenced by the commandant Max Kurgel, who influenced her behaviour, and she got involved in the horrific punishment at this camp. Maria Mandl was seen whipping women and beating them who had been stripped naked and tied to a post. She also once beat a prisoner so badly with a key that they were knocked out, and they were then dragged throughout the camp and thrown into a solitary confinement cell. With further expansion of the concentration camp systems, Maria Mandl was, at the age of 27, transferred to the newly opened camp of Ravensbrück, an all-female site close to Berlin. One female prisoner of Ravensbrück summed up the conditions of the site, saying, "They didn't shoot the women. We were to die of misery, hunger and exhaustion. When we arrived at Ravensbrück, it was the worst. The first thing I saw was a cart with all the dead piled on it, their arms and legs hanging out, and mouths and eyes wide open. They reduced us to nothing. We didn't even feel like we had the value of cattle. You worked and you died." Mandl became known inside of the camp for targeting women who had different hair, and she even shaved this off following beatings. She was witnessed kicking a woman to death during roll call, and whilst at Ravensbrück, she became a teacher, schooling other prospective female guards in how to instigate a reign of terror over others. She had a relationship inside of the camp with a male guard, SS Obersturmführer Edmund Browning. However, when he broke this off, Maria Mandl took out her anger on the inmates, and she shot a number of them to, in a sense, cure her broken heart. After a few years at Ravensbrück, she was then sent to Auschwitz II-Birkenau, the main extermination element of the deadliest concentration camp. Mandl worked under the commandant Rudolf Höss, and she was the Lagerführerin of the female camp, practically the commandant of the female camp. She ruled with an iron fist, and she was given bonuses in pay for the way she ran the female prisoners. She promoted other female guards such as Irma Grazer, the beautiful beast, and she often stood at the gates of Auschwitz-Birkenau, and she wanted a prisoner to look at her. If one did, they were quickly removed and were never seen again, presumably dragged away and shot by Mandl and other guards. Whilst at Auschwitz-Birkenau, she also got involved in the selections of prisoners to be sent to the gas chambers, and then she would patrol the train yards where thousands of men, women and children disembarked. Those who were not fit enough to work, or those who Maria Mandl deemed as needing to be killed, were immediately sent to their deaths, and her signature was found on the extermination lists of thousands of men, women and children, who were then driven into the gas chambers. One former prisoner said of her strange behaviour that, "I had a friend who had a job cleaning in the guards' hostels. One of the senior guards had a piano in her room. One day my friend went in and heard the most beautiful music. The woman who was playing was lost in a world of her own, in ecstasy. It was the same guard who had murdered the Jewish woman a few days earlier, this woman being Maria Mandl. She was decorated by the Nazis for her behaviour and actions, but as the Second World War was coming to an end, and as the Soviet Red Army were approaching the region of Poland, Maria Mandl was moved across to the Mühldorf subcamp of Dachau. This site was away from enemy lines, and she was seen as an asset by Heinrich Himmler. In May 1945, Maria Mandl fled the subcamp, and she moved to the mountains of Bavaria. She probably thought that she would be safe living in the mountains, and she did travel to different countries, evading capture. But on the 8th of October 1945, Maria Mandl was arrested by the Americans. Her image and likeness had been circulated, and she was someone who was being hunted for her crimes, and she now found herself locked up inside the former camp of Dachau, along with many other guards. During her interrogation it was found that she was rather clever, but she was a devoted Nazi, and she told the interrogators what happened inside the camps. Mandl was in November 1946 deported to Poland, where she was locked up inside of Montelupich prison inside the city of Krakow, and she was later brought to trial in December 1947 in the Auschwitz trial. Mandl and many other female and male guards, including former Commandant Arthur Lieber-Henschel, were tried with the crimes of Auschwitz. One witness in the courtroom stated that Maria Mandl behaves differently. She does her best to be in control of herself, but her efforts are futile. The woman who condemned female prisoners to death with a single gesture now cannot control her accelerated breathing, unnatural blush, and nervous twitching of her entire face. She was tried and found guilty of being involved and complicit in the murder and slaughter of 500,000 people, 500,000 men, women and children, who were all driven into the gas chambers of Auschwitz, all signed off by the female overseer. There was no denying her crimes, and other former prisoners had testified against her, and to those inside the courtroom it was clear that she was a monster. Following the death sentence being passed against her, Maria Mandl was locked up again inside of Montelupich prison, awaiting her execution date. She would not be executed on the gallows or a structure with a long drop, aimed to snap her neck. Inside of the prison they used slow strangulation. At 7:30 in the morning, on the 24th of January 1948, Maria Mandl was led into the execution chamber of the prison, alongside a number of other condemned Auschwitz guards. In the chamber were some hooks in the ceiling, and from these nooses dangled which had already been tied. Under the nooses were boxes for the condemned to stand on. Maria Mandl was helped onto one of the boxes, and an executioner then quickly secured the noose around her neck, and he kicked the box from underneath her. It's not known if she was given a cap placed over her head, but within a few minutes she was dead. She kicked and struggled as the life was choked out of her until her body went limp, and she was left for some time before she was then cut down. Her final words were "Poland lives." Her body was then donated to medical science and anatomists after her death. Maria Mandl was a harrowing and brutal female concentration camp guard, possibly the worst one inside of the SS or the Third Reich. She was a woman who was sentenced to death for being complicit in the deaths of 500,000 people, and she was someone who tortured and brutalised female prisoners on a daily basis. She was more than comfortable and happy to take someone's life inside of the camps where she worked, and she also drove prisoners into the gas chambers. She entered work inside the concentration camps to begin with, just for money, but it wasn't long before Mandl got her hands dirty, learning off other sadists how to become a beast and a murderer. Inside of a Polish execution chamber, she met her maker at the end of the noose. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.